Aka Shuda here. I'm going to review a hand that's posted in the small stakes forum of 2+2. I'm using their nifty little hand player here. This is a pretty cool hand. It's unknown, so there's no reads on our opposition. I see our hero is starting with less than 100 big blinds, which is not a good idea, but we're going to start out, we'll just take it as the action goes here. So we get dealt the red rockets, which sounds pretty dirty, but it's good because, you know, we expect to make some money here. We raised to $4, which is kind of an interesting play. If you just heard that weird horn-like sound, that was my dog yawning, so apologies for that. But anyway, we raised to 4. I think it's okay if you're trying to exploit some like weak passive opposition after you. Otherwise, I think you're going to do better off raising to a smaller size, and you can steal the blinds more often by raising a wider range, and you're not going to lose as much money if you get re-raised and have to fold. So, you know, with aces, raising to 4 is obviously fine if you get more money in the pot, but with your entire range, it might be an issue, and it's going to force you to play tighter. So I'm not really on board with the 4. But I can see the merits of it here with aces, and I guess that's what the poster of this hand was probably thinking. So we get 2 calls, and right away the 4 balls paying off. We see a flop, and it's pretty not great for us. It's Queen 9-8 rainbow, and it might be tough to tell with a 2-color deck here, which is kind of annoying. I'm going to have to figure out how to get some blue and green in here, but the small blind leads into us, and the button as well, which you know, there's definitely merits for him to do this with a pretty wide range here, and his lead size isn't necessarily, or I guess like particularly indicative of a very strong hand. So by that I mean if he did have a hand like pocket eights or jack 10 here, he would probably bet a little bit larger, something like 10, you know, maybe even 11 or 12. I just see that happening typically, but, you know, it doesn't necessarily tell us anything about his range. So here's, I think, the first mistake in the hand. Our hero goes ahead and raises, and I guess he's, you know, trying to outguess his opponent here, maybe making an exploitive play, like, okay, well, if this guy's making it 8, his most likely hand is something like Queen Jack, you know, Queen 10 suited, even Ace Queen. So I can get behind that and I understand what he's doing, but the problem is your hand is pretty, I mean, face up, like your range is going to be pretty strong, or at least something with a lot of equity here, to be able to raise the type of range that, you know, we're putting this small blind on, and what he's probably putting us on, putting him on. So if that makes any sense, he is going to react pretty well to what he is going to assume and what we probably are thinking. So not really sure I'm on board with the 24. The good thing about it is that it's going to get the button to play pretty straightforwardly, which is nice, because if we flat and the button raises, we're going to be out of position and in some trouble here. And that said, you know, having a raising range against a lead is a good idea. I would probably just rather have some hand with a little bit more equity and something, you know, if we were against an opponent we'd played against before, we'd have a better idea of where we stand with aces given some continued action. So then the hand gets really crazy. We get 3-bet pretty small by our opponent, and it looks like he's just setting us up to either shove the flop or get all in on the turn. And I think against, you know, 90+% of 50 cent a dollar regulars, this is like the easiest fold in the world. I think, you know, even if he had like ace queen, he would be more apt just to go all in. If he had something like 7-6 of diamonds, I think he would go all in. Jack 10, he probably would call just a bit more often than re-raising here, just to let us value bet worse or bluff off our stack. So this really looks pretty strong to me, like 2-pair or a set, about always. I don't think he's going to be semi-bluffing with a hand like 10-9 by making it 40 and then, you know, trying to shove on the turn. Although it's an interesting play to consider, because if he thinks we're raising hands like aces here, he might get us to flat and then put us into a break even but difficult decision on the turn. Or not break even, but indifferent. So we're gonna be like, oh, does he have 10-9, or a worse hand to use value betting or semi bluffing with, or am I up against a set often enough that I have to fold? So I think we could go ahead and fold right there, unless we're assuming that he's doing it with some semi-bluffing portion of his range, and that would be the rationale behind a call. Otherwise, you're just annihilated against a range of straights and two pairs and sets. On the turn, he bets all in, and the turn's a king of diamonds, and our hero ends up folding. And I think that's kind of counterintuitive to what we said about the flop. If we're going to be calling the flop raise, I think we need to be calling this turn, because the assumption is if we're calling the flop, then he's semi-bluffing pretty widely. And I think this is just a fantastic turn for all of his bluffs to continue on. So if he is ever continuing, I think it's going to be much more often on a king, and we should be calling a lot more often. We might even see him value shoving a hand like King Jack or King 10, so hands that we now beat. I don't like the fold on the turn given the flop action, but I think the flop action could use some work, at least calling the 3-bet against the average 50-cent dollar regular. So I hope you guys like this video. Hit the like button for me and tell a poker buddy, because it would really help the channel grow. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for watching.